3 long months, and I am finally back to hit you with another Worst Rappers in the Game episode. I know, it's been a minute, but don't lose your faith, this series is never gonna go anywhere. I mean, it might one day. But you know, for the time being, that I am always gonna bring it back. And today, we will be looking at NAV Goriah, aka Nav, the self-proclaimed brown boy of hip-hop.
Just a brown boy from the block. It's the brown boy. I'm just a brown boy. Brown boy in the game. I'm just a brown boy. I'm putting brown boys on the map.
To get an opinion of Nav's music, I listened to his self-titled album, Perfect Timing, and Reckless. Nav may claim to be the best brown boy in the game, but is he one of the worst rappers in the game in my mind? Well, that's the question we're going to be answering today, looking at both sides of it, positives and negatives, ups and downs. So with that being said, this is CDTV, and let's get right into the video.
I was sober for an hour, but I'm rolling off a bean now. The drugs, they give me confidence.
Might as well start this off with a very obvious statement. Nav doesn't have the biggest vocal range. One thing you will notice is that his tone is very similar on a lot of tracks. This is especially true if you listen to his self-titled album or many of the songs from Perfect Timing. For the most part, it doesn't even sound like he's making an effort to change his delivery. My Mind, Sleep, Minute, and Hit are perfect examples of this, with Hit probably being the worst offender. The fact that the beat is more sleepy than most of the beats Nav uses just isn't great when you combine it with his dead-end rap singing, which lasts for the entire song.
Everything hit. Songs hits, all my chains hit, I look like a lick.
With some of these songs, it just really feels like Nav is droning to me, and it makes it difficult for him to carry an album past the 30-minute mark most of the time. You see, I say that because he does have his moments, especially on his most recent album, Reckless. It's not a massive step up or anything, but I do feel like he makes more of an effort to make his delivery a little more varied and different on that project than on his other ones. The peak of this for me is the song Hold Your Hand, where Nav uses this kind of weird, higher pitched delivery, and I think it genuinely sounds good, and it keeps the track interesting from start to finish.
I went through pain for all of this. I had to change for all of this. Why you got your hands up? I always had everything planned out.
That's one of my favorites from Nav. With most tracks on Reckless, I really do feel like he's trying at least a bit more, and I appreciate that. Even on some older songs like Lonely, there's glimpses of him throwing a couple more layers into his vocals to just spice them up a little. He just needs to do that more often. Of course, there are occasions where him trying to step out of his comfort zone doesn't work, such as Bring It Back, where during the hook it sounds like the autotune is struggling to keep his vocals in key.
Give me your mind, she shake that ass and bring it back to me.
And then of course there's Glow Up, where he ends each line in this really goofy way.
Make my own beats and I write my own words. Catch found a diamond tucked under the dirt. I blew my third track in second and first.
But mostly, I do appreciate when he sounds like he's somewhat trying a little bit more. When it comes down to his voice, I feel like Nav can be very divisive, and despite my criticisms, I do enjoy his vocals to some degree. Sure, it doesn't vary much, but I think that's why I feel very comfortable listening to his music. I know his voice isn't anything crazy or unique, and he really does lean heavily on autotune, but I don't hate it as much as most people do, and I kind of like the relaxed vibe that it gives off. Based off of what I've said here, I'm gonna give Nav a 5.5 out of 10 for this segment, just right in the middle. I think he's getting better, and there's even songs where he uses that more low-key delivery that I do enjoy, but his voice has also stopped a lot of his songs from reaching their full potential, so I can't give him a much higher score than that.
Me and Metro don't need help. Meal a pint to myself. Flew a porn, started ATL.
Let's start this segment off with some nice, good, positive points. There are two songs in particular that I really enjoy Nav's flows on, and those songs are Bali and Maintain, both of which Nav is a featured artist on. The one on Maintain really surprised me because it has way more flow switches than your average Nav song, and it was just really consistent.
AP bust down, Rolly playing Jamie and Belly XO, same team, same gang. Whoa. Let my nuts and my chain hang. Whoa. And the mood saying, have mood swings.
It's one of my top verses from him, and in Bali, his flow just suits the song perfectly. It genuinely gets me hyped up.
This and Derek, that ain't wise, 88 bullets. list gon' drop him. Chicken in a pot, got your girl watching my cock. In New York, I merely rock.
But those really are the most standout flows from Nav, because when it comes to everything else, his flow is mostly just standard. In this case, I kinda get it, because having multiple crazy flow switches doesn't really suit the vibe his music is going for. It would kinda disrupt that sleepy atmosphere. But to say his flow is anything above just alright would be a stretch to me. He does kinda push sticking to one flow for too long to the limit though. And to show you what I mean, let me play you a clip of his song called I Am.
15 racks, 20 racks, 30 racks, I got them bands. I show the eyes on my shirt and them D&G pants.
That flow sounds pretty nice, right? Yeah, it really does. Until you reach the 3-minute mark of the song and he's still using the exact same flow. I'm not joking, there's literally not a single flow change on that song, and it really takes away from how good the song could have been. It's the same on songs like My Mind and Minute, a song where Nav's flow is so dull that Playboi Carti decides to actually rap on it to compensate. That's a landmark achievement. I will admit, however, that Nav's cadence typically does help his songs have the vibe that they do, and that's why I'm not gonna be too harsh, and I'll give him a 4 out of 10. He does have a couple standout moments, like I said, and his flow is suitable for the sound that he's going for. It's just a lot of the time it can get a bit dull and repetitive.
I'm just a brown boy, I'm just a brown boy, I'm just a brown boy.
I've heard a lot of people call Nav one of the most uninspired lyricists out there, and wow. They were not joking. I don't think he's the absolute worst, but I do have a lot to talk about, so let's just jump right into it. There's one particular aspect of his lyrics that Nav is awfully unique in, and that is the fact that he manages to nail sounding really creepy on a lot of his songs. A trait which I don't think I've seen from many rappers in this series so far. A trait which I don't really want to see from many rappers in this series. The song Lonely appears to be about Nav trying to coerce a girl into doing drugs with him when it's kind of clear that she really doesn't want to. It's just like, why are you so desperate for her to do drugs with you when it's very clear that she's not into that? It's a little bit weird. Then we all know about the lyric on Glow Up, where he says, I grabbed that ass and she called me a perv, she opened her legs so I had to insert. Now, that could have been a completely consensual interaction. She might have been playfully calling him a perv, which, as I've said before, just doesn't seem normal, don't do that. But he really did make it sound as non-consensual as possible. Not really something you want to do when you're trying to portray this image of a stereotypical rapper who gets a lot of women without even trying. Seriously, just listen to his albums yourself and you'll be able to compile a list of questionable and creepy Nav lyrics in no time. Another big issue I have in this category is his inconsistency with his thoughts on certain things. And what I mean by this is a lot of the times he kind of comes off as contradicting himself or being hypocritical, and that really stops him from building a character that you can buy into. Personality is pretty important in rap, and Nav doesn't have much of one. Case in point, Wanted You. I do really like that song, but it makes Nav look a bit clueless when you look at the lyrics. He talks about a girl he thought he liked cheating on him, but it's kind of hard to sympathize with him when on the song Interlude, he says this.
I make a finger low, just so I can fuck on when I want.
Damn, I can't believe such a noble, loyal man got cheated on. My heart bleeds for you, Nav. He does have some promising moments where he actually drops some fairly depressing lines into his songs, such as these ones. But they appear so randomly amongst lines that aren't emotional at all that they really don't hold that much weight. There's only rare and welcome occasions like Held Me Down where he fully displays some emotional vulnerability, but it doesn't happen regularly. I guess the last thing I want to say is that Hold Your Hand is also my favourite in terms of the lyrics. I really do like that song. He basically talks about being in a relationship with a girl and giving her all of his attention, but she never appreciates it or never shows the same appreciation back to him. Your boy just heard this song when he was going through a somewhat similar thing, so this song just kind of stuck with me. Not to mention, the last verse where he references the majority of his song titles while still kind of making sense is genuinely a nice piece of writing, and if you go back to the intro of this video, you'll actually notice I did the exact same thing at the start. I don't know why, I just thought it would be kind of fun. Overall, I'm gonna give NAV a 1.5 out of 10. There's the odd track I can relate to at certain points, and a few lyrics that were nice, but for the most part, NAV just embodies the stereotypical rapper image with very few unique aspects. Oh, also, like I mentioned, he's gonna let you know that he is, and I quote, a brown boy very, very often.
Make my own beats and I write my own words. Catch find a diamond tucked under the dirt.
Now, unlike most rappers in this series, NAV actually produces or co-produces the large majority of his own beats, and that's something I can always commend. You can definitely tell he has a very particular production style, with most of his work sounding very subtle and nocturnal, usually with very subdued vocal samples in the background of the beats. Now, I personally enjoy a decent amount of his low-key style of production, but there are a couple instances where he can be so low-key with his beats that they're almost non-existent. This happens mostly with songs on his self-titled project like TTD or the suitably named Sleep.
The brown boy getting dough, she ain't knowing, now she know. I used to get no hoes, but now when I come home, these bitches taking off my clothes.
Most of the instruments are barely even present, and if you mix a dead beat with NAV, he's not the one to revive it, he's not going to be able to do it.
He's not it, Chief.
Honestly, the production got pretty repetitive on that album. Okay, listen to this one. Then the next one. Oh look, it's another low kind of moody synth. Oh, another kind of low moody synth. Would you guess it? Another low moody synth. I do think NAV's solo production style is alright as a whole, but when I look at my favourite songs from him, 90% of them don't have a production credit from NAV, or they're co-produced. Hold Your Hand, Champion, Freshman List, Wanted You, Both Sides, these are just a handful of tracks where I love the beats and they're entirely handled by other producers. For me, this is a sign that he should definitely work with other producers' beats a lot more in the future, because he can make some relatively nice songs over them. At the very least, I would love it if he had more co-produced tracks, because his collab album with Metro Boomin definitely contains some of my favourite beats that he's used. Just listen to the one on I Am, and that's a sound that I absolutely love.
Bitch, you know I'm tryna fuck and I don't wanna dance. Now I can go to the mall cause they know who I am.
Overall, I'd have to say I mostly really like the beats that NAV chooses to use, but I do appreciate that he's working with more and more different producers as time goes on, and is producing his own beats a little bit less. I'll give him a 7 out of 10 here, considering the fact that the beats are hugely responsible for making sure his songs don't get too boring. I personally like the moody nighttime aesthetic his music gives off, and a lot of that sound can be credited to the production. My biggest issue is really that it just gets quite repetitive and bland on his self-titled project.
My rollie tell me what the day is. I like her cause she basic, she got braces. Her followers 100K and she too famous.
So, to rank my enjoyment of his albums, it goes like this. Perfect Timing is my favourite because even though NAV is still quite monotone on here and it doesn't need to be as long as it is, it's actually pretty perfect for like nighttime driving music, and it has the highest proportion of memorable songs. Then Reckless, because even though there's some awful and forgettable tracks, it does have some hits on there. And in last place, we have his self-titled album, because even though there's some songs I really enjoy on that one, it showcases NAV at the peak of being moody, generic, and bland. If you've heard one NAV song, you've pretty much heard most of his discography, but it's good music to put on if you just want to relax, in my opinion, or turn up as well. Maybe this is just me with my friends, you know, my friends like Sammy, who pretty much introduced me to NAV, so thank you for that one. But we've talked about this, and we've literally partied to the exact same NAV songs that we also fall asleep to. The best way I can kind of describe it is dead hype. It works in both situations for some reason. NAV embodies genericism in most aspects of his music, and he does it in the least energetic way, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't replay a lot of his songs a lot of times. I know his music is generic and standard, but the overall vibe just works for me a lot of the time. You guys ready for this? I'm gonna give NAV a 7 out of 10 for my enjoyment rating, and I'll be patiently awaiting the roasts I'm gonna get in the comments for this one.
Don't play no hockey, yeah. My strap is black and hot like coffee, yeah. I'm going fast, you can't stop me, yeah.
So overall, NAV gets a final score of 25 out of 50 here, a nice even 50%, which actually is a somewhat good score for this series. This places NAV at the 10th spot on our list, something I'm sure people will point out and criticize when they see the list without actually watching this video to see my reasoning. This puts NAV above Smoke Perp, but below Juice WRLD. I can understand why NAV gets the heavy criticism that he does, but I don't think his music is as bad as most people say it is. Again, it's really a love it or hate it type thing, and I'm on the verge of really liking it. So guys, thank you so much for watching this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm so happy to finally have one of these Worst Rappers in the Game episodes out again. Of course, leave a like if you enjoyed this one. I'd really appreciate if you could share it to help it get out there. And if you're new here, you can always subscribe if you feel like it. Remember that you can find me on my social medias under the name CDTV Productions. I'll try and answer as many DMs as I can on there after this episode goes up. So yeah, if this has just been uploaded, follow me on my social media accounts, shoot me a DM, and I'll try and answer as many of them as I can. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you all in the next one. And this is CDTV Productions, signing out.